There is a courtyard in Delhi, behind the walls of a 12th century mosque, where a pillar of iron stands alone. It was forged 1,000 years before the mosque was built. It weighs 6 tons. It is nearly 1,600 years old, and the iron has barely rusted. Three facts about a single land. First, when the pyramids of Giza were rising from the desert, the cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa already stood in the valley of the Indus, brick streets laid in straight grids, drains running beneath every house, a civilization of more than 1 million people, already old. Second, 3,000 years ago, on a plain south of the Hindu Kush, a man kneels at a fire before dawn. He feeds it ghee, and he begins to chant. The hymns he sings were taught to him by his father, and to his father by his father's father, in a chain of mouths that runs back further than memory reaches. He cannot read. The hymns are written nowhere, and yet, this morning, in a temple in southern India, another man is chanting the same syllables, in the same order, in the same tone. 3,500 years without a single word lost. Third, the iron pillar of Delhi was forged by Hindu hands in the age of the Gupta kings. It stands today, surrounded by the Islamic stonework of a Turkish sultanate, and the Prime Minister of India speaks in Hindi, a tongue shaped by the Persian the Mughals brought down from Kabul. To Indians, this simultaneity has a name, continuity. To historians, it has another name, absorption. India was entered by Aryan pastoralists from the steppe, by Persian Achaemenids, by the Macedonians of Alexander, by Turkish horsemen, by Mughals from Kabul, by Portuguese traders, and, finally, by the British. None of these reduced India to its own mold. Each one was swallowed. Each one became a part of India. The name of the subcontinent never changed. How does a civilization survive 4,500 years of almost continuous change without erasing itself? And of the 6 independent cradles of civilization the species has known, why is the Indian one the only one with a living, direct heir, 1.5 billion people deep? This is the entire story of India. From the first brick laid at Mohenjo-daro to the death of the last great Mughal emperor. 4,500 years in 50 minutes. It is not a chronicle of kings and battles. It is the story of a civilization that learned how to survive. Open the door to the invader. Give him room to breathe, and then transform him from the inside out. "4,600 years ago, a man walks down a street of baked brick. The street is straight. It crosses another street at a right angle. Beneath his feet, in a covered drain, runs the wastewater of the house he slept in. The drain was built before he was born. It will keep working after he dies. The city is called today Mohenjo-daro. No one knows what it was called in the mouth of those who lived there. He crosses a courtyard and reaches a public bath, a rectangular tank lined in brick, sealed in bitumen against the water. 2 floors of rooms surrounding it. Here, in some ritual whose shape no one has recovered, the people of this city wash themselves. The city is already 300 years old. He climbs to a platform and looks out. There is no palace. There is no temple rising above the rooftops. There is no royal tomb. There is no colossal statue of a king. The houses of the rich have 2 floors and private wells. The houses of the poor have 1 floor and share a well with neighbors. The difference is one of degree, not of world. More than 1 million people live in this civilization we now call the Indus Valley. 5 great cities, hundreds of towns, an area larger than pharaonic Egypt and Sumer combined. Standardized weights, stone seals carved with a script that survives on more than 4,000 objects, 400 distinct signs, short messages, the seals of merchants who sailed by sea to Sumer and came back. This is the first writing of the Indian subcontinent. No one, in nearly 100 years of trying, has read it. Computers have been brought to bear. Artificial intelligences have been brought to bear. The signs remain silent. Sometime around 1900 before Christ, this city will be abandoned. The people will walk away. The streets will remain. The bricks will fall into the drains. And when, in 1922, a British archaeologist named John Marshall uncovers all of this from beneath the sand, the world will have to rewrite the history of India to include a civilization that had been, until then, completely forgotten. The man from the fire is moving. He drives cattle ahead of him through a pass in the mountains, the Hindu Kush, where the wind comes down cold from the north, even in summer. His sandals are worn through on one side. The animals are thin from the crossing. He has been walking for weeks, following the clan ahead of him, following the clan ahead of that one, in a migration so slow that no single man in it understands what is happening. Behind him, to the west and north, the steppe. Horses, the smell of dry grass in autumn. Ahead of him, to the south, a plain he has no name for yet. The cities he is walking toward are already emptying. He does not know this. The rivers of the Indus Valley have shifted in their courses over generations. The monsoon has weakened. The harvests have thinned. And one family at a time, the people of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa have walked east toward the plain of the Ganges, where the rains still come. The streets are falling silent. The drains are filling with sand. The script, never deciphered, is going with them into a forgetting that will last 4,000 years. The herdsman descends into the emptied northwest and lets his cattle graze on the plain. He carries a tongue no one in this land has heard before. It calls fire by the name Agni, water, Ap, the Sky Father, Dyaus Pitar. His people have horses and the wheel, and a religion of hymns sung at the fire at dawn, the same fire we saw him kneeling at before the crossing. The hymns will be called one day the Rig Veda. They will speak of rivers he is seeing for the first time. They will be passed by mouth, father to son, for 1,000 years before anyone writes them down. His blood will mix with the blood of the Indus farmers who stayed. The gods of the steppe will meet the gods of the river. Neither side wins, neither side disappears. This is the first absorption. A man sits in a deer park outside the city of Sarnath, in the shade of a tree, with 5 companions who are watching him. He is thin. He has been thin for years. He tried fasting to the edge of his life and stepped back. He tried the priest's rituals and found them insufficient. He sat beneath a different tree further south for 49 days and arrived at something he did not yet have words for. Now he is trying to find the words. He begins to speak. He calls what he is teaching the middle way. His followers will call him the Buddha. Around him, across the 16 kingdoms of the Ganges plain, something is breaking open. The cattle clans of the herdsmen's descendants have become cities. Iron tools have cleared the forest, coined silver passes from hand to hand. A class of priests, the Brahmins, has become the keeper of the fire and the keeper of knowledge. Another class, the Kshatriyas, the keeper of the spear. The rituals have grown heavier. The questions have grown louder. In a kingdom not far from Sarnath, another man has stripped off his clothes entirely. He has vowed to harm no living being, not an insect, not a worm. He carries a feather broom to sweep the path before him, so he does not crush anything underfoot. He will walk the roads in silence for 12 years. He is Mahavira. His followers will be the Jans. In the forests east of the Ganges, men and women are walking out of their villages in ochre robes, carrying a begging bowl, sitting beneath trees, asking questions the Vedas do not answer. What is the self? What dies and what does not die? Is the ritual fire enough? And while they ask, far to the west, the Achaemenid Emperor Darius the Great absorbs the Indus Valley into the Persian Empire. 2 centuries later, Alexander of Macedon crosses the same river at the head of a Greek army. Both will leave. India will keep their gold, their sculpture, their kings' faces, and forget the rest. An older man stands in the dust outside the walls of Pataliputra, watching a young man argue with a group of boys. The older man has a shaved head and a broken tooth, and the kind of stillness that comes from having waited a long time for something. His name is Chanakya. He is a Brahmin from Taxila, the great university city of the northwest, and he has been humiliated at the court of the Nanda kings, turned away at the gate, laughed at by the guards. He has been looking since that day for the right instrument of revenge. The young man arguing with the boys is the instrument. His name is Chandragupta Maurya. He has no royal blood that anyone can verify. He may have been raised by peacock farmers. He has been hunted, disinherited, exiled, but he moves like someone who has not yet understood that he is supposed to have lost. Chanakya watches him for a long time. Then he walks over and makes him an offer. What the offer was exactly, no one recorded. What we know is the outcome. Chandragupta takes the throne of the Nandas. Then he turns west, meets the Greek garrisons Alexander left behind in the Indus Valley, and defeats them in the field. The treaty is signed in 303 before Christ. Seleucus, the Greek general, cedes everything east of the Hindu Kush. Chandragupta sends him 500 war elephants. A Greek ambassador named Megasthenes arrives at Pataliputra and writes a book about a city he calls the largest in the world. And in a small room of that palace, Chanakya is writing a different book. It is called the Arthashastra, the science of wealth and power. It runs to 15 volumes. It tells the king when to use spies, when to use poison, when to make peace, and when to break it. It is colder than Machiavelli, and it is written 1800 years before Machiavelli is born. For the first time, the subcontinent is ruled by a single throne. The empire barely has time to breathe before the throne passes to Chandragupta's son, and the son has a son, and the son's son will be the man who changes everything. A man walks through a city that has just stopped burning. The ground is dark beneath his feet. The air still carries smoke. He walks slowly, the way people walk when they are not sure what they are looking for, past doorways that are open and silent, past walls that are still standing and walls that are not. He has been on the throne for 8 years. He has fought wars before. He thought he knew what winning looked like. He does not know what this looks like. His name is Ashoka, the grandson of Chandragupta, the third Maurya emperor. And the city he is walking through is Kalinga, on the eastern coast, on the Bay of Bengal, which refused to bend the knee to his empire, and which he has just, by the numbers he will later carve into stone himself, taken at a cost of 100,000 dead in battle, 150,000 taken away as captives, and many times that number gone afterward to wounds and hunger and disease. He does not go back to the palace and declare victory. He goes back and writes. He has it carved in the years that follow, on rocks and on pillars across his entire empire, from Afghanistan to the Bay of Bengal, in the language people actually speak, in a script called Brahmi. The 13th Rock Edict says this: there was great slaughter and capture and carrying away of peoples, and the beloved of the gods feels deep remorse. A king does not write that. Kings do not carve their regret into stone for their subjects to read. Ashoka does. From that year forward, he will rule by Dharma, the moral law. He sends his son and his daughter to Sri Lanka as Buddhist missionaries. He builds hospitals for humans and for animals. He plants trees along the roads. He digs wells. He raises pillars of polished sandstone taller than 3 men across the empire, and on each one carves the same message. Here, killing has been renounced. The pillars are still standing, 40 of them scattered from the foothills of the Himalayas to central India, polished after 2,300 years. But within a generation of Ashoka's death, the empire collapses. Within 2 generations, no one remembers who he was. And within 500 years, no one alive can read the Brahmi script. The pillars stand, mute, for 2,000 years. Pause here for a moment. We have come 4,000 years in 17 minutes, and we have not yet reached the halfway point of this story. We have walked through a city of 1 million people that vanished without leaving its name. We have followed a man across the Hindu Kush with cattle and hymns and a language no one in this land had heard before. We have sat in a deer park at Sarnath while a thin man tried to find words for something the priests could not name. We have watched an older man with a broken tooth hand a throne to a young man who should not have had one. And we have followed an emperor into a burning city and watched him come back and write his remorse into stone. That is the India that built itself. What comes next is the India that is built upon. From here, Roman ships will pay in gold for a pepper on the southern coast. A mathematician in a tent at Ujjain will calculate pi to 4 decimal places. And then, from the northwest, a wave will come that none of the earlier arrivals prepared anyone for. But hold the image of the pillars before you go further. 40 of them, still standing, everyone carved in a script no one alive can read. They are waiting, and in the last minutes of this video, a man in a colonial library in Calcutta will sit down with a pile of rubbings on his desk, and the pillars will finally speak. In a tent at Ujjain, a young man bends over a palm leaf manuscript by the light of an oil lamp. He is 23 years old. His name is Aryabhata. The lamp is low and the night is quiet, and he has been working since before the other men in the camp woke up. On the leaf in front of him, in ink made from charred wood and water, he is calculating the value of pi, not approximately, to 4 decimal places, 3.1416. He checks it. He checks it again. He is also proposing, in the same manuscript, that the Earth rotates on its own axis, and that this rotation, not the movement of the heavens, is what makes the stars appear to wheel at night. He is 23 years old. He is working in a number system that uses position and zero, the system the entire world will eventually adopt. The text he is writing will be called the Aryabhatiya. Around him, the Gupta Empire is at its height. A king named Chandragupta I, no relation to the Maurya, took the city of Pataliputra a century and a half ago and founded a new dynasty. Under the Guptas, the subcontinent has entered what later historians will call its classical age. Sanskrit literature reaches its peak. A poet named Kalidasa, working in these same years, is finishing a play about a forest girl named Shakuntala that will still be performed 1,500 years later. And in a courtyard in Delhi, on a hill that is not yet a city, a foundry is pouring iron into a single shaft. 6 tons of it, in a metallurgy so pure it will not rust for 1,600 years. That pillar, the one from the courtyard at the opening of this video, it is being made here, now, under the Guptas. Hindu temple architecture takes its classical form in these centuries. The Mahabharata and Ramayana are set down in something close to the versions still recited today. The civilization the herdsman from the steppe carried south across the Hindu Kush is now, by almost any measure, the most learned on earth. Aryabhata blows out the lamp as the sun comes up. The manuscript is finished. A Roman ship enters a harbor on the southwestern coast of India in the year 50 after Christ, and the captain has never smelled anything like this. Pepper, cinnamon, something burning in a temple on the hill above the port. The air is thick with it, coming off the land on the morning wind before the anchor is even down. He has crossed the Arabian Sea in 40 days on the southwest monsoon, a wind that a Greek navigator named Hippolus learned to ride a generation before, cutting the journey from Egypt to India from 2 years to 40 days. The captain carries amphorae of wine, glass, coral, and chests of gold coins minted with the face of the emperor in Rome. He will leave with pepper, with cinnamon, with pearls and cottons finer than anything Egypt weaves, with diamonds that exist nowhere else on earth. This trade is so heavy that Pliny the Elder, sitting in Rome a generation later, will complain in writing that India is draining the empire of 50 million sesterces a year. Modern archaeologists digging in Tamil Nadu still pull Roman coins out of the soil by the handful. The captain is docking in a world entirely unlike the north. This coast speaks Tamil, not Sanskrit. Tamil is a language as old as anything the herdsman brought down from the steppe, and entirely unrelated to it. It has its own poets, its own kings, its own gods. The Sangam poems, composed in these same centuries, sing of merchants and lovers and warriors on a coast where the monsoon turns the sea green. There is no Gupta emperor here. There is no memory of Ashoka's pillars. There are only the kingdoms of the south, the Cholas, the Pandyas, the Pallavas, trading east and west and growing rich on the distance between them. 3 centuries after the Roman captain unloads his wine, a Chola king named Rajaraja I completes a temple at Tanjavur. The central tower is 66 meters of granite, taller than anything in Europe at that hour. He carves into its walls the names of every donor, every dancer, every musician who contributed. The temple is a public archive in stone. His son builds a navy. The Chola fleet sails east, takes the Andaman Islands, raids the kingdom of Srivijaya in what is now Indonesia. Hindu kings in Java and Cambodia copy the temple architecture. A king named Suryavarman II, 3 centuries after that, commissions a temple to Vishnu in the jungle of his country. We call it Angkor Wat. That is how far the south reaches, and that is how thoroughly it gets forgotten in the standard story of India. A girl of 16 sits in the dark before the temple opens, composing. She has been doing this for months, rising before the priests arrive, before the lamps are lit, before the ritual begins. She composes love poems to the god Vishnu, written in Tamil, in a voice so intimate that the priests, when they finally read them, will not know whether to be scandalized or moved. They will be moved. Her name is Andal. Her verses will be sung in temples across the Tamil South for the next 1,300 years. She is doing something the classical law says she cannot do. She is doing it anyway. What Andal begins in the 7th century, others continue for the next 800 years across every corner of the subcontinent. Not in palaces, not in Sanskrit colleges, on the roads, in village squares, in the mouths of people the system was not built for. In Karnataka, a wandering holy man named Basava tells his community that the only temple is the body, and the only worship is honest labor. He abolishes caste inside his own circle. In Benares, a weaver named Kabir composes verses in the language of the street. He is raised by Muslim parents. He sings of a God who has no name a Brahmin would recognize and no name an imam would accept. Hindus claim him. Muslims claim him. He says the God is neither in the temple nor in the mosque. Both sides keep singing his songs. In Rajasthan, a woman named Meera leaves a royal marriage to wander the roads, singing to Krishna. In Maharashtra, a cobbler named Ravidas writes hymns that will, centuries later, be folded into the holy book of the Sikhs. This movement is called Bhakti. It means devotion. It has no founder, no single text, no date of origin. It moves in vernacular tongues, not Sanskrit. It opens the gods to anyone who can love them. By the time the next wave arrives from the northwest, the Hindu world they will encounter is no longer the world of the Vedic priests. The mosque, when it comes, will not feel as foreign as it might have 1,000 years before. The civilization is preparing itself without knowing it for what is about to walk through the door. A man rides into Delhi in the year 1193 and stops his horse at the ridge of Mehrauli. He is looking at a cluster of Hindu and Jain temples on the high ground above the plain. He has been fighting for 20 years. He knows what a strategic position looks like, and he knows what a sacred site looks like. And he is calculating, on horseback in the dust of a city he has just taken, what to do with both at once. His name is Qutb-ud-Din Aibak. He was born in Central Asia, sold as a boy into the household of a Persian-speaking warlord named Muhammad of Ghor, trained as a soldier and given command of an army that has, in the past year, broken the last great Hindu Rajput coalition at the plain of Taran and ridden south to Delhi. He is a slave by origin and a general by merit, and he is about to become the founder of a dynasty. He gives the order. The temples at Mehrauli come down. Their stones, columns, and lintels, carved with Hindu and Jain figures, are reused in the foundation of a new mosque. Above the mosque, Aibak begins to raise a tower, 73 meters, 5 tiers of red sandstone and marble, inscribed in Arabic calligraphy. The tower is the Qutb Minar. It still stands. The mosque at its base uses pillars from 27 dismantled shrines. You can still see the carved figures, partly defaced, in the columns holding up the arches. They are still there. The Sultanate of Delhi holds for 320 years under 5 successive dynasties, each more Indianized than the last. Persian becomes the language of administration. Urdu, the language of the bazaar, begins to form at the intersection of Hindi and Persian in the mouths of soldiers and merchants who need to talk to each other. The Khaljis push armies into the Deccan. The Tughlaqs move the capital south, then back, breaking themselves in the attempt. The temples that fell, fell. The temples that were not destroyed went on. Hindu kings still ruled most of India, but for the first time in 4,000 years, the political center of the north was not Hindu. The question was whether this too could be absorbed. A Portuguese traveler named Domingo Paes rides toward Vijayanagara in the year 1520 and cannot find words for what he is seeing. He has been riding for days through a landscape of granite boulders and dry scrub, and then the city simply appears, spreading across the valley of the Tungabhadra in every direction. He will write about it later. He will say it is as large as Rome, that rubies and diamonds are sold in the open street by weight, the way grain is sold in Lisbon, that the king's palace has a hall whose ceiling is held up by 100 pillars, every one of them covered in ivory and gold. He is looking at the capital of Vijayanagara, the city of victory. It was founded in 1336 by two brothers, Harihara and Bukka, who had served the Tughlaq sultans of Delhi, been taken north and sent back south as governors. Once back, they converted to Hinduism, declared independence, and built a kingdom whose entire purpose, as their priests would say, was to be a wall, a southern wall, behind which the gods of the old India could keep breathing. By the time Paes arrives, the wall has held for nearly 2 centuries. 500,000 people live within it. The Virupaksha shrine, the Vittala temple, with its courtyard of musical pillars that ring like bells when struck. A carved stone chariot with stone wheels that turn on their axles. To the north, the 5 sultanates of the Deccan have spent a century fighting each other. In 1565, they stop. They form a coalition, 5 sultans against 1 Hindu king. The king of Vijayanagara is named Aliya Rama Raya. He is over 70 years old. At a village called Talikota in late January, he is outflanked, outranged, and probably betrayed by 2 of his own Muslim commanders, who turn their cannons on his own lines at the decisive moment. Rama Raya falls on the field. His head is raised on a lance before his army. The army breaks. What happens next takes 4 days. 4 days of fire, 4 days of methodical destruction. The bazaars Paes could not stop looking at are burned to their foundations. The palaces are pulled apart stone by stone. The temples are smashed. The musical pillars are broken. The stone chariot is dismantled. The faces on the temple walls are chiseled off. When it is over, Vijayanagara is gone. You can walk the site today. The granite hills still stand. The temples stand partly. The bazaars are empty stone arcades 2 kilometers long, leading nowhere. We call the place Hampi now. It looks almost exactly as it looked the week after Talikota. Domingo Paes, writing in 1520, called it the best provided city in the world. 45 years later, there was nothing left to provide. To the chronicles of the time, this was the end. The last great Hindu kingdom had been broken. The classical India that began at Mohenjo-Daro, that produced the Buddha and Ashoka and Aryabhata, that built temples from Ellora to Thanjavur to Hampi, had, after 4,000 years, finally lost. That is what 1565 looked like to anyone alive in 1565. A man stands at the top of the Khyber Pass in the winter of 1525 and looks south. The wind is coming up hard from the plain below. He has been here before, looking down at this same view and turned back. He has spent 30 years losing things. He lost his first kingdom at the age of 12. He tried to take Samarkand 3 times and failed each time. He lived as a refugee in Persia. He settled in Kabul because there was nowhere else left to go. He has read about the land below him in books. He knows its rivers by name. He knows the names of its kings. He has never set foot in it. His name is Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad Babur. On his father's side, he descends from Tamerlan, who built a pyramid of skulls in Delhi a century and a half before. On his mother's side, he descends from Genghis Khan. He is 42 years old, small and wiry, and he keeps a diary. He writes in Chagatai, his mother tongue, a language no one else writes literature in. The diary is called the Baburnama. He writes about his soldiers, about flowers, about melons, about regret. Later, when he finally crosses into India, he will write that the country has no good melons, no grapes, no ice in summer, no dignified society. He will write this because it is true to him. He will not yet be able to imagine staying. He gives the order to descend. On the plain of Panipat, north of Delhi, in April of 1526, his 12,000 men meet the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi, with 100,000 men and 1,000 war elephants. Babur has cannons, 20 of them, and a tactic learned from the Ottomans. Chain the wagons together in front of the line, let the cavalry charges break against them, and have the gunners pick off what comes through. The battle lasts a single morning. Ibrahim Lodi falls on the field. Babur rides into Delhi the following week and sits on the throne of the Lodis, the throne of the Tughlaqs, the throne of the slave kings. He does not yet know what he has started, but 40 years later, when his grandson is seated on that same throne, a Portuguese traveler will ride into a city 800 kilometers to the south and not be able to find words for what he is seeing. A boy of 13 sits on a throne in a tent on a battlefield in the Punjab, and the men around him are waiting for him to speak. His father died 4 days ago, not in battle, on the steps of his library in Delhi, where he slipped, hit his head, and did not recover. The throne passed to the boy before anyone had time to prepare either of them for the transfer. The boy's name is Akbar. He cannot read. He can ride and hunt and wrestle, but he has never sat through a lesson, and he never will. For the rest of his life, he will be illiterate. And for the rest of his life, he will have books read aloud to him every evening, hundreds of them, in Persian and Arabic and Turkish, and the new tongues of his Indian subjects, and he will remember everything he hears. The men waiting for him to speak in the tent are commanded by a regent named Bairam Khan. Bairam Khan will do the actual ruling for the next 4 years. Akbar watches and listens. By 18, he has dismissed Bairam Khan. By 25, he is alone on the throne, and he begins to do something no Muslim sultan of India has done before. He marries a Hindu Rajput princess, then another. He does not require them to convert. He builds them temples inside his own palace. Their fathers and brothers are not crushed. They are made generals. The Rajput kingdoms become not subjects, but partners. The Mughal army stops being a Turkish army with Indian auxiliaries and becomes something that has no precedent in the history of this subcontinent. He abolishes the jizya, the tax on non-Muslims that every Islamic state in India has levied for 300 years. He abolishes the pilgrimage tax Hindus pay to visit their own holy cities. He invents an administrative ranking system, the Manstabdari, that places every officer of the empire on a single scale, the same scale for a Brahmin general and a Persian poet and an Afghan cavalry commander. He calls this policy Sul-e-Kul, universal peace, peace with all. The boy who sat in the tent in the Punjab, not knowing what to say, has become the most powerful man on earth. And he is about to do the thing for which, 450 years later, he will still be argued over in Indian living rooms. Akbar sits on the central platform of the Ibadat Khana and listens to two men call each other heretics. The building is new. He ordered it built 4 years ago. Here in Fatehpur Sikri, the city of red sandstone, he raised 40 kilometers west of Agra on a ridge above the plain. 4 walkways converge on the platform where he sits. 4 open sides, no roof. The stars are visible above the argument. He invited these men, the ulema, the Muslim scholars of his court, because he wanted to understand his own faith more deeply. He is illiterate. He needs people who can read to tell him what the texts say. And what the texts say, according to the men on his platform tonight, is that the man on the other side of the argument is wrong, corrupt, possibly damned. The argument has been going on for months. Akbar sits very still, the way he sat in the tent in the Punjab when he was 13, watching and listening. But what he is watching now is not a council of war. It is scholars of the same faith, the faith of his fathers and his fathers' fathers, tearing each other apart over points of law, while the emperor they are supposed to be teaching sits between them and says nothing. He is disgusted, and so he does something no Muslim emperor in the recorded history of the Islamic world has done before. He invites the others. A Hindu Brahmin walks through the entrance, the sacred thread across his chest, and sits down on the platform where the ulema have been sitting. A Jain monk arrives in white, carrying a small feather broom to sweep the ground before each step, so he does not crush an insect. 3 Jesuit priests come from the Portuguese colony at Goa in black cassocks, carrying a Bible and a painted portrait of the Virgin. A Parsi priest arrives from Gujarat in white robes, the living keeper of the fire of Zarathustra. A Buddhist, a philosopher who believes in nothing at all and says so when asked. They sit, they argue. The emperor listens. Thursday after Thursday, year after year, he commissions translations. He has the Mahabharata, the great Hindu epic, translated into Persian. The translation is called the Razmnama, the Book of War. He has the Upanishads translated. He has the Bible translated. He has the Quran itself retranslated into a Persian register accessible to anyone who can read, not only to the scholars. In 1582, after 7 years of these Thursday nights, he announces a new spiritual order. He calls it the Din-e-Ilahi, Mahi, the religion of God. It has no scripture, no clergy, no temple. At its peak, it has fewer than 20 members. It does not survive his death. It does not need to survive. The order was never the point. The point was the platform. The point was what it meant that a Muslim emperor of Turkic-Mongol descent, the most powerful man on earth, had sat down with the priests of the people he had been told he conquered and asked them, Thursday after Thursday, what they believed. 50 years after Domingo Paez rode into Vijayanagara and could not find words for what he saw. 50 years after the 5 sultans burned that city to its foundations in 4 days. The grandson of the man who stood at the top of the Khyber Pass with 30 years of failure behind him had married Hindu princesses, abolished the tax on Hindu pilgrims, put the Mahabharata into the imperial library in Persian, and built a roofless room where a Jain monk and a Jesuit priest and a Parsi firekeeper could sit on the same platform and argue in front of a king who was listening. The civilization had not ended at Talikota. The civilization had absorbed the conqueror. The Mughal had become Hindustani. A woman named Mumtaz Mahal sits in the imperial camp at Burhanpur in June of 1631, in the final hours of her 14th labor. She has been at Shah Jahan's side for 19 years. She has traveled with him on every campaign, sleeping in tents in the field while the empire moved around her. She is 38 years old. She does not survive the night. Shah Jahan locks himself in his apartments for a week. When he comes out, his hair has turned white. He gives an order. The most beautiful building that has ever been built. For 22 years, 20,000 workers labor on the southern bank of the Yamuna River in Agra. White marble comes from Rajasthan, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, jade from China, carnelian from Yemen. The dome rises. The 4 minarets rise. The calligraphy is placed on the arches in letters cut, so that each one appears the same height to the eye standing below, whether at the base of the arch or at the top. It is a Muslim emperor's monument to his Muslim wife, built by Hindu stonemasons, inlaid with stones from a dozen countries, inscribed with Quranic verses arranged by a Persian calligrapher. It is the synthesis the Ibadat Khana made possible, set in white marble on a riverbank. Shah Jahan plans a second tomb for himself across the river in black marble. He never builds it. His third son removes him from power and confines him to the Agra fort, where he can see the Taj Mahal through the window of his room. He lives that way for 8 years. The third son is Aurangzeb. He rules for 49 years. Under him, the empire reaches its greatest territorial extent and produces, by some estimates, a quarter of the world's economic output. And under him, the synthesis fractures. The jizya is reimposed. Some temples are destroyed, others protected, and historians argue about the proportion to this day. The Sikh guru Tegh Bahadur dies in Delhi rather than convert. The Marathas, under a Hindu king named Shivaji, hold Aurangzeb's armies to a standstill for 25 years. Aurangzeb dies in 1707, 88 years old, on campaign in the south, sleeping on bare ground, sewing prayer caps to pay for his own burial. The empire fragments within a generation. In 1739, Nadir Shah rides into Delhi and takes the peacock throne. In 1757, on a riverbank near Calcutta, called Plassey, 3,000 soldiers of the British East India Company meet 50,000 under the Nawab of Bengal. The British win. They will stay for 190 years. Step back from the chronology now. 4,500 years, one subcontinent, 8 major waves of newcomers. The man from the fire who crossed the Hindu Kush with hymns no one in this land had heard. The king who walked into a burning city and carved his remorse into stone. The Portuguese traveler who rode toward a city and could not find words for what he was seeing, and 50 years later, there was nothing left to see. The illiterate boy who sat in a tent in the Punjab and grew into the man who built a roofless room and filled it with everyone who disagreed with him. And finally, the British. The British arrive in 1757 and rule for 190 years. They build railways and a postal system and a unified legal code. They also engineer famines that take millions of lives, including the Bengal famine of 1943. They remove wealth from the subcontinent, by some accounts, trillions of pounds in modern terms, and send it to London. In 1947, on the night of August 14th and 15th, the British leave. The subcontinent is partitioned into 2 countries, then later 3. Between 200,000 and 2 million people are lost in the violence that follows. 14 million are displaced from their homes. It is the largest forced migration in human history, completed in less than a year. Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of the new republic, stands before a flag that he and his colleagues have just designed. 3 horizontal stripes: saffron, white, green, and in the center of the white stripe, a wheel. It is the wheel of Dharma, the Ashoka chakra, taken from the capital of a pillar raised in the year 250 before Christ by an emperor who conquered the eastern coast of India, walked into the burning city of Kalinga, and ordered his remorse carved into stone in a script called Brahmi. For 2,000 years, no one alive could read what those pillars said. In 1837, in a library room in Calcutta, an East India Company official named James Prinsep sits at a desk covered in paper rubbings taken from the surface of those pillars. He has been working on the Brahmi script for years. On a winter evening, he cracks it. Letter by letter, the inscriptions begin to speak. And as Prinsep reads, he realizes that the same voice is speaking on every pillar, from Afghanistan to Bengal. The same author, the same imperial hand. A name no one had spoken in 2,000 years comes back into the world: Ashoka. 1 century later, Nehru places that man's wheel at the center of the flag of the new India. The edicts of an emperor who renounced conquest become the symbol of a democratic republic. The script that no one could read for 2 millennia becomes the emblem of a nation of 1.5 billion people. The civilization remembers itself. Go back to the courtyard we began in, the courtyard behind the walls of a 12th century mosque in Delhi, where a pillar of iron stands alone. It is still there. The iron is still barely rusted. The mosque around it was built by Qutb-ud-Din Aibak, the slave soldier who rode into Delhi on horseback and stopped at the ridge of Mehrauli to calculate what to do with the temples on the hill. The pillar inside his mosque was forged by Hindu hands under the Gupta kings, 7 centuries before Aibak was born. It has stood through the Sultanate, through the Mughals, through the British, through partition, through 75 years of republic. Tourists of every religion walk around it every day and press their backs against it, because there is a tradition that if your arms can reach behind you and your fingers touch, your wish will be granted. The script of the Indus Valley is still unread. Artificial intelligence is now being trained on the 4,000 surviving inscriptions. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe not. But this is what the subcontinent has been teaching, in stone and in language and in the bodies of its people, for 4,500 years. Civilizations do not survive by becoming rigid. Civilizations survive by becoming porous, by letting the stranger through the door, by giving him a place to sit, and by being old enough and patient enough and confident enough in what they are to know that whatever he brings will, in the end, become part of what was already there. The name of the subcontinent never changed. In the 1st century after Christ, ships left the southern ports of India and sailed west across the Arabian Sea. They carried pepper, cotton, pearls, diamonds. They sailed past the coast of Arabia. They rounded the Horn of Africa, and they put in at a harbor on the Red Sea, where their cargoes were carried inland on camels and on the backs of men up to a high plateau where, before Constantine of Rome had ever heard the name of Christ, a king had already converted his entire kingdom to a faith his neighbors did not yet understand. He minted his own gold coins in his own image, in his own script. He raised stone obelisks 33 meters tall, carved from a single block that still stand. His monasteries are still there, on cliffs only reachable by rope. You have probably never heard his name. In the next episode, we travel to a kingdom that traded with Rome and Persia and India, that called itself the equal of any of them, that survived the rise of Islam by retreating into its mountains, and whose direct heirs still live in the same highlands today. The forgotten empire on the Red Sea, the Kingdom of Aksum. Subscribe to the long thread. The next civilization is being prepared. Every empire ends. The thread does not. The thread does.